let's just jump right into it. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the endless lists of so-called miracle cures, detox teas, and superfood smoothies online, yeah, you are definitely not alone. It is a frustrating, endless cycle. We're constantly bombarded with these quick fix promises that, let's be honest, rarely deliver. Today, we're cutting through all that noise in this explainer. We're ditching the fads entirely and looking strictly at the real physiological facts about reversing fatty liver disease.
So let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question. Can a single superfood actually cure a fatty liver? I mean, we see the articles literally everywhere, right? In our social media feeds, popping up on our news apps and lining the magazine aisles. Eat this one rare berry, drink this highly specific green smoothie, and boom, your liver will magically heal itself overnight. But when we actually look under the hood, does human biology actually work that way? No way.
Dr. Sten-Eckberg really hit the nail on the head when describing the reality of our current diet culture. He points out that much of the common advice we hear isn't just, slightly off. It's completely ineffective. It's built on marketing hype designed to sell products, rather than an actual, grounded understanding of human physiology. Because when a massive wellness industry is incentivized to sell you a quick fix, the biological truth often gets buried under incredibly catchy slogans.
Okay, so let's get into the root cause revealed.
There is a super stark contrast between what most people think causes a fatty liver and actual biological reality. The common myth that eating dietary fat, things like butter, cheese, or a burger, directly makes your liver fat. And hey, it sounds completely logical, right? Fat equals fat. But the reality is entirely different. A fatty liver is actually primarily driven by excess carbohydrates, the breads, the pastas, the sugars we consume every single day, and the massive insulin resistance they trigger in the body.
Which brings us to a really crucial medical term, de novo lipogenesis. Now, put simply, this just means your liver is manufacturing fat directly from the excess carbohydrates you eat, but why exactly does it do this? Well, when you consume way more carbs than your body can immediately use for energy, your glycogen storage tanks fill up completely. They're maxed out. With literally nowhere else for that energy to go, your liver is forced to undergo this biological conversion process. It essentially turns into a forced fat-producing factory just to handle the overload.
Imagine your liver as a polluting factory sitting right on the edge of a pristine, beautiful lake. Eating most of these heavily marketed superfoods, well, it's kind of like throwing better fish food into the water. Sure, the fish might get a tiny bit of nutrition, but you are doing absolutely nothing to stop the factory from dumping toxic pollution into the water in the first place, right? Until you actually shut down the factory, the lake is going to stay polluted.
So let's talk about marginal fixes and fads.
First up, the foods we just have to dismiss entirely. We completely dismiss oatmeal because, despite its pervasive heart-healthy reputation, it is ultimately just a starch. And what do starches do? They break down into sugar, which spikes your insulin, which directly feeds that fat-making factory we just talked about. We also have to dismiss water. Now, don't get me wrong, water is absolutely critical for your survival, but your liver isn't a dirty dinner plate. Drinking gallons of water won't somehow wash the fat away. It's a metabolic issue, folks, not a plumbing one.
Next, we step up to the better fish food category. This is where herbs and spices, blueberries, and green tea fall. Now, are they good for you? Absolutely, for sure. But the active healing compounds in these foods exist in such tiny, trace amounts that they require massive doses or highly specific extractions to offer even marginal minor relief. Ultimately, relying on these is just throwing slightly better food into that polluted lake without fixing the root cause of the pollution itself.
Now, let's move on to the foods that actually heal.
Let's look at the cellular allies that are actually going to war for your liver. First up, coffee. Believe it or not, coffee actually improves liver fat metabolism and helps reduce specific liver stress markers like ALT, which gives your organ a real fighting chance to recover. Then we have extra virgin olive oil and avocados. These guys are packed with incredibly healthy oleic acid. Think of them as your cellular defense team. They aggressively displace harmful inflammatory processed fats in your diet and actively help lower your baseline insulin levels over time.
Next up, we have the ultimate cellular cleanup crew. Leafy greens provide the essential precursors for things like folate and glutathione, and these are the fundamental building blocks your liver desperately needs to conduct deep detoxification. And then there are cruciferous vegetables, especially broccoli, which contain an incredible compound called sulforaphane. Now, sulforaphane actually activates the NRF2 pathway. Think of NRF2 as your body's master antioxidant switch. When you flip that switch on, it triggers a massive, systemic, cellular cleanup process.
Moving along, we look at gut health and direct fat reduction.
Fermented foods and apple cider vinegar are incredibly useful because they significantly slow down gastric emptying. And slowing down gastric emptying means you stay fuller longer, and, way more importantly, you blunt those dangerous blood sugar spikes that feed the fat factory. Alongside them, the powerful omega-3s found in fatty fish, like salmon, mackerel, and sardines, they go to work directly, literally reducing triglyceride synthesis right inside the liver itself. A real game changer.
All right, so what is the ultimate liver strategy?
We have reached the very top of our medical detective list. What takes the absolute #1 spot for reversing a fatty liver? Well, this #1 strategy might completely subvert your expectations of what a typical health food looks like, especially after decades of being told exactly the opposite by mainstream dietary guidelines.
Meat and eggs take the #1 spot. Crazy, right? But why? Well, because eggs are incredibly rich in a crucial nutrient called choline. Choline essentially acts like a shipping truck for fat. Without enough choline, fat simply gets trapped inside the liver, which just compounds the disease. You absolutely need it to export that fat right out of there. Furthermore, meat delivers complete amino acids and essential nutrients like carnitine and zinc. Together, meat and eggs provide the exact structural building blocks your liver needs to actively heal itself. And the best part? They do it all without spiking your insulin.
Ultimately, to heal a fatty liver, we really have to completely abandon this search for a magic bullet superfood. You just can't sprinkle a handful of blueberries on a terrible diet and expect a miraculous cure. Instead, we have to focus entirely on stopping the intake of the excess carbohydrates that trigger the liver to manufacture fat and cause severe insulin resistance in the first place. So I'm going to leave you with this to think about. What is the very first carbohydrate you were going to cut from your daily routine to finally shut down your liver's fat-producing factory?